Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome along tonight. It's really great to see so many people here. You just never know, on a cold, miserable night like tonight, how it's going to go, so thanks for coming out. So my name's Karen Roberts, and I am the president of the volunteer group Healesville Community Renewable Energy, and I'm pretty excited to see what the next 2 hours hold for us. So the topic tonight is all about electrifying your home, and that seems to be the burning topic at the moment, which is why Healesville Corps have decided to explore it further. And as you know, you're probably familiar with the Facebook site My Efficient Electric Home, and we've got Tim Forcey here who's going to have a chat with us about that. And then we've also got Kate Minter from a great organisation called Rewiring Australia, and she's going to be, her face is magically going to appear on that screen at some stage, hopefully. And then after that, we're going to have a chance for a Q&A, which I think is very important to allow you guys to have a chat with us and ask all your burning questions. And then after that, we have supper in the foyer, so a chance to chat further and mix and mingle. Now, we've also invited Yarra Ranges Council here today, and Yarra Ranges Council have supported Healesville Corps right from the beginning, back in 2017. And tonight they've actually supported us by providing our beautiful Memo hall for us. And we're going to have, Patricia is going to be just doing a short talk about what's happening in the sustainability department. But before that, I'm going to invite our Councillor Fiona McAllister to come up here and just say a few words and give our acknowledgement of country. Thanks, Fiona.
Thanks, Karen. Like everyone, I've worn a woolly jumper tonight because it can get a bit chilly in here, but I'm pleased it's a warmer evening in here, so very warm welcome to all of you. Of course, would like to start by saying I'm very proud to have been born in the land of the Ngāi Tahu and Aotearoa. But of course extremely grateful to live on this country, the lands of the Wurundjeri, this beautiful green valley surrounded by the trees and the mountains, this very precious place that I know we're all very grateful to call home, and pay my deepest respects to elders past, present and emerging. You'll have to excuse me, I do have a tremor, so you'll see a very wobbly microphone as I stand here in front of you. So a very warm welcome, both temperature and in terms of a heartfelt welcome to you here tonight. Great evening, and I'm very pleased and have been right from the moment that Corps was first established to be able to support them, as I know Yarra Ranges Council has as well. As all of us know, especially living in this beautiful valley, we're living in a time of rapid change in our environment, and gosh, do we see that every year, whether it's storms or fire or certainly changes in climate, extreme weather events in succession. And now in Yarra Ranges we know that every year we have at least one significant weather event, floods this year. Hopefully that may be it for us for the year, but I suspect not. And this, of course, extreme weather has an impact on all of us. And as many of us know, it often means that we're without power for quite substantial periods of time. And certainly as we saw with the big storms a few years ago, it was many weeks, in fact months for some. So certainly electrifying your home and ways to do it in sustainable ways is a topic very front of mind. We're also experiencing an unprecedented rise in the cost of living. We're relying on grid energy, costs more and more, and as we all know, the cost of living has skyrocketed, and so the impact on everyone in terms of financial terms is something that's very front of mind as well. And that's why, renewable energy, which is why I was so thrilled when Corps was first established, is an absolute no-brainer. Whether you're interested in environmental impact, treading more lightly on the earth, or whether it is about making ends meet, it's a win-win for everybody. And of course, there's no silver bullet to the problems that we face, but one of the most significant things, which I'm preaching to the converted, as you all know, is converting to renewable energy. And using renewables, and I would ask for a show of hands who's already converted, but I certainly know for us and for our family home, converting to renewable energy, to solar energy, certainly we know is contributing to the environment, but had a huge financial impact on us as a family. reduction of 70% in our energy bills in the first year. And at the moment, that matters more than ever. For council, and I'm pretty sure Patricia will speak to this, so I won't steal too much of her thunder, but switching to solar and moving to renewable energy providers has more than halved our greenhouse gas emissions compared to the early 2000s, halved. And of course, the other important piece is it saved us millions of dollars, which now can be put back into other community projects, including supporting groups like CORE, who are doing wonderful work in our community. So like all of you, I'm here very interested to hear. I will duck away for my children's story time, which many of you know is pretty sacred for me, but this is a very important topic, and I'm thrilled so many are here to hear from such a great panel of speakers this evening. So I'm going to pause there and hand to Patricia from the sustainability team at Yarra Ranges Council, who will tell you more of the detail and the interesting things that we're doing at Yarra Ranges Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McAllister, for that warm introduction and for that acknowledgement to country. Hello everyone, my name's Patricia and I'm the Sustainability Officer at Yarra Ranges Council, and I look after net zero emissions projects within the Yarra Ranges. So I'm going to keep it very brief, and I'm just going to share a couple of resources and programs that we have at Council to help you community members change to all electric and on your electrification journeys. Sorry, is this... Okay, yep, I figured out the clicker. And I'll also be in the lobby at the end of tonight's session handing out some flyers with this information, so feel free to come up and have a chat and grab some information. So the first resource that I'm going to go over is the Go Electric plan. So many Victorian homes have a lot of gas appliances, and as we'll hear tonight, a healthier, cheaper and environmentally friendly option is moving your home to all electric appliances. And so the basis of this plan is these 5 key actions. So installing solar or switching to green power, switching to a split system air conditioner, replacing an old gas hot water system with a hot water heat pump, upgrading to induction cooking, and moving to electric transport. Now, this is quite an overwhelming process, and so it's important to note that it doesn't have to be all at once. Your Go Electric plan helps you to prepare so that when appliances like hot water need replacing, you're ready to make the switch. So the idea is that you can think about the age of your appliances ahead of time and prepare. Identify the one that is most likely to need to be replaced first, and then this resource also highlights what electric alternatives exist and how they compare in terms of cost and efficiency. And this resource also talks about what the systems are. This is just a part of the sheet, what the benefits are, and it importantly highlights where you can go to have a look at the rebates that are available, because that's often something that's important and can really help. And so currently there are rebates, state government rebates for solar panels and hot water heat pumps, and they range from $1,000 to $1,400. And there are also interest-free loans available. But these change periodically, so it's important to know where to look. And the last column also mentions the Solar Savers program, which is a council-supported program. So Solar Savers was created when a group of councils banded together because they realised that it can be quite overwhelming for community members to know where to look. There's so much information out there, which installer do you trust? It can be very confusing. And so the idea is that this program exists to make it as easy as possible for you to install these appliances. So the idea is that they've done the hard work for you. And there are currently 18 councils that are involved across Victoria that are involved in this program. So how it works is that you register your interest online, It's important to note that it's not just solar panels that this program offers, but it's also batteries, hot water heat pumps, and split systems. And so you answer a couple of questions that are specific to your home, and the Solar Savers team reaches out to you. They check your eligibility, and they connect you with any possible rebates that you might be eligible for. And Solar Savers went through a public tender process to choose an installer that's trustworthy, reliable, well-established, and that installs high-quality products. So they take your information and hand it over to the installer, who then provides you with a commitment-free quote. So the idea is that you receive a quote with the product that you're interested in, and then it's just information. You can then use this quote to go reach out to other services providers, receive a quote, and decide how you would like to proceed. But it's a first step you can take just to see what you're eligible for and what systems you can install. So I'll be outside at the end of the session handing out some information. Feel free to come up and grab some flyers and have a chat. And I'll now hand over to Karen, who will introduce tonight's main speakers. Thank you very much.
Good idea. Thanks for that, Patricia. We've actually, on Healesville Core's site, we do direct people to the Solar Savers program. I think it's a great idea. Okay, so time to introduce our first speaker, and that's Tim Forcey. And he's also selling his new book, and I thought it was worthwhile just telling you the subtitle of the new book, which is How to Slash Your Energy Bills, Protect Your Health and Save the Planet. So I think we're in for a bit of a ride tonight, so I'd like to invite you, Tim, to come up, and thanks very much. Tell us all about your efficient electric home.
Yep, very good. So, mic's good. Alrighty. Well, thanks for having me here tonight in beautiful Healesville. I live in Sandringham. And so since my son and I were up at Lake Mountain skiing last week, I said, well, look, I might as well get up to Lake Mountain today and do some skiing as well. So I've skied 15 kilometers today. I haven't had a shower yet, so this distance here is probably pretty good. Let's keep it that far away. I think it's probably the good thing for this evening. But no, it is a beautiful part of the world, and had a nice pizza across the street, so it's good to see everybody here. And oh my goodness, what a haul! I mean, so with this book, it published on the 18th of June, and I've been to Ballarat, I've been to Shepparton, of course I've been many places around Melbourne, down at Flinders, up at Eltham last week, and you just never know what sort of a setup it's going to be. This is a beautiful hall, or is it going to be in a small bookstore, or is it going to be in a pub? So it's been fun. I never thought I'd write a book. I'm only writing one book, this is it. There's not going to be any more. So let me tell you about it, and let me see if we can. So how's the slides work? Oh, there we go. That's not me. So I wonder where my slides, am I going the right way? Anybody know? Oh, there we go. Found one. Found it. There we go. There's some slides. So I'll take you through this. Talk about my efficient electric home, how to be healthy, comfortable, and maybe even save $3,000 a year. So how did I get into all of this and this book? There's quite a few chapters in the book, and it goes through the whole lot, whether it's about heating and cooling or hot water or cooking or getting off the gas grid, but then don't forget the insulation and the draft proofing and the window treatments and the windows, and how do you maintain good air quality, et cetera, et cetera. Then finally the solar panels, and should you get a battery, and what about an electric car? So there's all that stuff in there. But how did the book come about? Well, what happened was 9 years ago, well, even before that, I migrated to Australia to work in the gas industry, and now I tell people don't use this stuff because you got cheaper and cleaner and healthier options. And so I left the fossil fuel industry back in 2010, but in 2015 I had a casual research gig at the University of Melbourne, and we looked at a bunch of things. But we finally got around to looking at home economics, and we looked at home heating. And 9 years ago, we worked out that you could heat your home with a reverse cycle air conditioner for a third the cost of gas. For a third. I mean, So why aren't we all doing this? I mean, it's like going to the store and there's a loaf of bread and there's a loaf of bread that costs 3 times more. Which one would you buy? So heat your home with a reverse cycle air conditioner for a third the cost of gas. And now I'm still banging on about this 9 years later. One problem when we published this report, we got a little bit of media, but we kind of published the report on like the last day of winter. And guess what? The next day was spring, and so nobody cared anymore. So when a woman rang me up who was to become my publisher and suggested putting a book together, now this was back in September, I said, well, we got to put it out for winter. And Karen said before that this is very topical, the cost of living, et cetera, so if the timing's right and it's flavor of the month, that's great, because that's what we planned. So yeah, heat your home with an air conditioner, save hundreds of dollars a year. So this is what the research said, and we got a little bit of media, but my kids said, Dad, if you want to spread the word a bit more, there's this thing called social media. And I said, what's that? And they said, well, it's Facebook. And this is 9 years ago, and I'm like, what's Facebook? And so I had to get onto Facebook, and so I started this Facebook group, and I ended up calling it My Efficient Electric Home. And there it is. Many of you would probably be members if you're on Facebook at all. I can't wait till I'm not on Facebook anymore, but for the time being, I started a group that now has 128,000 members, and we've got 1,000 new members a week joining, particularly since the book has been launched. So we've got all sorts of people coming in, and it's more than a chat. I mean, you can get in there and you can ask, how can I bubble wrap my windows to make them warmer, and you'll see a discussion. But it's also probably the world's largest database on this sort of stuff because it's a searchable thing. There's the little magnifying glass, and so you could type whatever you want in there. Type in Healesville, or type in solar savers, or type in bubble wrap, or whatever it is. And you'll find posts going back 9 years. I mean, I can find the original post that I started this group with. So it was a useful way to spread the word that people can save some money by not using the fossil fuels, getting onto a reverse cycle air conditioner. But the other thing was it validated what we had said at Melbourne Uni, that people could save a lot of money. Now we have tens of thousands of case studies of people who have electrified their homes, heating with reverse cycle air conditioners, saving thousands of dollars across the winter, like Jackie down the bottom. We used our reverse cycle this winter in Canberra, worked great, on track to save $1,100. So that was good to see that the theoretical numbers we worked out at Melbourne Uni were actually coming true for a lot of people out there. Another thing I started over the last few years is I started a business. And I actually go into people's homes and offer advice as to all the things they can do. And so I'll spend 3 hours in a home. And again, this is what we're doing. We're shutting off these old ducted gas heaters, which are past their use by date anyway. And then we're helping people to learn how to heat with their reverse cycle air conditioners and save a lot of money. And what we just heard from the authorities, the Australian Energy Market Operator, who I also worked with for a couple of years, they just published a quarterly report, and so they've noticed finally that the use of gas in Eastern Australia is now finally falling. It hadn't been growing for a few years, it had been kind of flat, but now it's actually falling, and they said, and this is even with a winter now that's been particularly cold. So we've had a particularly cold winter, and yet gas demand is falling. So, and I can believe it, some of these gas heaters that we've shut off, oh my God, they were using so much gas. People are spending $25 a day on gas, for example. So we're shutting some of those off, and now we're starting to see the impacts that the demand for gas in Eastern Australia is actually falling. Of course, we're still exporting most of it. We export like 85% of the gas that's produced in Australia. But I guess the goal is someday we'll be exporting 100% because we won't need to be using any in Australia. Rightio. So this is now a thing, abolishing the gas meter. So if you can get off the gas heating, the gas hot water, the gas cooking, you ring up the gas supplier and say, look, you can see I'm not using any more gas. Why are you still sending me a gas bill? And they'll probably organize to have the meter taken away, which is excellent because sometimes it's a really good spot for a pot plant. So that's one good reason to see the meter hold away. But we do see the celebrations on My Efficient Electric Home. People will they'll put up a post, and today's the day the gas meter's leaving, and they'll go through their whole home story about how maybe they've been at it for 3 or 4 years, but they finally got to the point where the gas meter disappeared, as well as the bill. I mean, often ask people, put up your hand if you want to get a gas bill for the rest of your life. And I've not yet had a person put up their hand. So, you're probably going to stay on the electricity grid, but you can get off the gas grid. And of course, we'll hear later tonight from Rewiring Australia about getting off the petrol grid and getting off all of those fossil fuel grids and just using renewable energy. This is the only graph in the book, and it's our house. So I'll take you through it. It starts in 2008 and comes up to 2022. And the red stuff is the gas we used to buy for our house, and the blue stuff's the electricity. In energy units, I'll talk about dollars later, but in energy units, kilowatt hours a year. So you can see the red stuff we used to buy was the gas in 2008, and the blue was the electricity. Now you can see our electricity purchases went down a bit in 2009. Why was that? Well, we bought those first 6 solar panels, the enormous 1 kilowatt system that were heavily subsidized in the John Howard, Kevin Rudd days. So that did have an impact on our electricity purchases. And then across through to 2016, we were draft proofing and we were better insulating and got some better window treatments and did some renovations and put in some double glazed windows. So the house still isn't perfect. It's a 1903 weatherboard. There's no underfloor insulation. It's so close to the sand that if I wasn't here tonight, I'd be under there digging, trying to get under there and put some insulation in. And not all our windows are double glazed, and they don't all have great window treatments. But we'd made some, by 2016, you can see we were using less gas. But the real game changer was in 2017, and that's when I took my own advice from University of Melbourne, and we started heating the home with 2 reverse cycles. So one in the main part of the house and one in the master bedroom. And you can see from 2016 to 2017, the use of the gas just collapses. Now, the gas industry says we can't do this because, of course, reverse cycle air conditioners use electricity, and your electricity use will skyrocket when you use a reverse cycle air conditioner. So you can kind of see from 2016 to 2017, the blue goes up a bit. That's our electricity use skyrocketing. Actually, it doesn't go up that much at all because the new reverse cycle air conditioners are just so efficient. And the gas industry kind of forgot that the old ducted gas heating systems actually used a lot of electricity, to blow the air around the house with the fan. So you hardly see the electricity use going up, even though we've killed a lot of our gas use. And like I said, there's tens of thousands of case studies now at the Facebook group of other people finding the exact same stuff. And probably somebody in the audience here tonight has already been there, done that. By 2018, we got off we got a heat pump for the hot water, so no more gas for hot water. In 2019, to augment the 1 kilowatt of panels, we put up 6.5 kilowatts more. So now we have like 28 panels. The 1 kilowatt's still working. I've kind of kept it there as a science experiment to see how long it'll run. So it's still working. But in 2019, you can see now the blue goes below zero, which means the house has become a net provider of electricity to the system over the course of a year rather than a net consumer. Of course, right now, middle of the night, we don't have a battery, don't have an electric car. So, of course, my wife's at home. She's using electricity coming off the grid. But the blue going beneath zero indicates that over the course of a year, the home is a net producer of electricity into the system. And by 2022, we finally got off the gas cooking. So that was finally the end of the gas bill. And the home's a net producer of energy. Now, in terms of dollars, we still get like a $600 a year electricity bill. We run an electrically heated spa, so a luxury item, which uses, I tend to say uses as much electricity as the rest of the house. Otherwise, our electricity bill would be even less than $600 a year. But if we go back to 2008, if we'd never made all these investments, our home would be costing us $3,600 a year. So that's the $3,000 a year savings. You see from heating with the air conditioners, getting the solar panels, hot water heat pump, and no gas bill. I mean, you pay about $1 a day to be connected to gas. So that's $365 that you can eliminate when you get rid of the gas bill. Just before we get into how you can improve your homes, I always do need to remind myself, we do have this climate emergency. And though it's great fun here meeting with you in Healesville and selling a book and doing stuff I never thought I'd do, it actually comes back. I'm not just here to save you money. It actually comes back to the climate emergency. And we see some graphs like this. where we see the world's, the global temperatures, going through the roof. Whether you look back 20,000 years or just, 100 years or whatever that is, we can see the temperatures shooting through the roof. Now, I trained as a chemical engineer at university, and I used to work on, in oil refineries and chemical plants and offshore oil platforms, and you'd design stuff so that it didn't blow up, that it didn't go out of control or run away, and you'd monitor things. You'd monitor temperatures, pressures, etc. So when I first started to see these climate graphs like this that the scientists were producing, a chemical engineer looks at that and says, whoa, we got a system out of control, so we need to get it back in control. And so that's where we're at. These are pretty scary graphs. I wrote a book. That's one little thing I can do to try and maybe help the situation. Perhaps you all improving your homes somewhat, in addition to saving money, will be the little thing that you can do to address the climate emergency. Anyway, back to home heating. Heat with the air conditioner. Don't burn anything. We've got an expression at my efficient electric home. It's where we don't burn stuff. So we don't have to burn gas. We don't have to burn wood. We don't have to burn LPG. There's better options, and that's the reverse cycle air conditioner. How does it work? Now, here's the challenge. A reverse cycle air conditioner is a split system. It's a heat pump. It's how do they work? Why are they so cheap? And it comes back to the technology of the refrigerant system of the heat pump. What it's able to do using a refrigerant system in its cycle tonight, if you're using a reverse cycle air conditioner, and if you go near the outside unit, it is frickin' freezing out there. And you think, well, it's just because it's blowing air around. But no, it's because there's refrigerant in there that's minus 25 degrees, and it's blowing air around so that it can actually extract free renewable heat from the environment. So I don't care if it's -4 in Coldstream or whatever, there is still heat in the air that will flow into that minus 25 degree refrigerant and warm it up a bit. Boy, there we've captured this free heat. Then the refrigerant goes through its cycle, goes through the compressor. Now it's hot enough to come into the inside unit where there's another fan, and you can blow the heat off the refrigerant and into your home. And then the refrigerant is cooled down a little bit, then it goes through an expansion valve, goes back down to minus 25 degrees and does the thing all over again. So that's the refrigerant cycle. That's a heat pump cycle. It doesn't so much generate heat as it goes outside and finds free heat out there and brings it inside. So these things can run at 400, 500% efficiency, which means you buy 1 unit of electricity to put into them, you can get 400, 500 units of, 4 or 5 units of heat coming out of them, and that's why they're 400 or 500% efficient and far cheaper than the gas. Far cheaper even than these electric heaters. So these electric heaters might be 100% efficient. You put in 1 unit of electricity, you get 1 unit of heat coming out. Sounds great, but they're not heat pumps, and so they're not going to give you 3 or 4 or 5 times as much heat coming out for that same use of electricity. So avoid using the electric heaters if you can be using instead a reverse cycle air conditioner. And avoid using gas. When you buy gas, the first thing you do with it is you set it on fire, and you lose a fair bit of the heat up the flue stack or the chimney. So these gas units are all less than 100% efficient, and so the gas industry really can't compete anymore with reverse cycle air conditioners. Just a warning note with the gas units, if you're still using a gas unit or LPG, make sure that it's not putting out poisonous carbon monoxide. So you should have these units checked not less than every 2 years, even your ducted gas heating, to make sure that it's not putting out carbon monoxide. I had one set of clients, they proudly showed me their carbon monoxide detector. They weren't that old, they're about my age, but they were going to sleep at 5:30 in the afternoon, and they thought maybe they were too young to go to bed at 5:30 in the afternoon. But it turned out their gas heater was trying to kill them. So they were proudly showing me their carbon monoxide detector until they could get to the point where they could be heating with the air conditioners. Wood as well. There is no safe level of smoke to breathe. So if you can avoid burning wood, that would be excellent for your health, the health of your family, the health of your neighbors. Try a reverse cycle air conditioner. It could be a lot more convenient than having to gather up the wood and set it on fire. If you happen to have the solar, and if the sun happens to be shining, which doesn't necessarily arrange itself that way all the time, but there can be occasions in our home in the winter, say it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll turn the air conditioner on to heat the house, because I've still got some electricity coming from the panels. Might as well heat the house a bit from 3 to 5 p.m. Then I'll shut it off at 5 p.m. once the sun's gone down and we get into peak electricity demand time. See if you can ride through without having to turn the heater on again. So that's one way of time shifting the use of energy, if you can kind of preheat the house in that way. Anyway, if you do that, you know, you don't get paid much these days for putting electricity out onto the grid, so this is extremely cheap heating if the sun happens to be shining. So find that heat button on the air conditioner. It's the one that's spelled H-E-A-T. Push it, get some of that fairly low-cost heat coming into your home. Again, the gas industry says, look, this is all too expensive to do this. And yes, you may have to go down to the shop, get a couple AA batteries, put it in your remote control, because maybe the remote control is dead since you last used the air conditioner in the summer. Get those fresh batteries in there, push the heat button, and start saving immediately. You'll pay for the batteries in about a day. So that's one way to do it. And if you don't have the air conditioners already, there are very significant rebates and incentives available from the Victorian government, thousands of dollars off, if you want to get an air conditioner or an air conditioner heating system. So long as you're getting off the gas heating, the Victorian government will support you on that to the tune of thousands of dollars. So it's all kind of amazing. I didn't actually expect the Victorian government to do that. So it's, yeah, check it out. If you could use some more in the way of reverse cycle air conditioners, get some quotes and you'll see the deduction for the Victorian Energy Upgrade Program, which could be worth thousands of dollars. But sometimes people will have air conditioners and you know, when I come to their home and they say, look, Tim, I knew you were coming. We tried the air conditioner. It didn't really seem to heat the house that well. And it's because of this. And I'll say, well, you know, is the filter clean? And they'll look at me, they'll say, the what? The what? I say, is the filter clean? Well, they didn't know there was a filter. So you open up the plastic panel and you start to see this sort of thing. So we clean that out and then you suddenly find the air conditioner is doing a much better job. Even a ducted gas heating system should have a filter, which is this other one here on the right. So make sure the filter is clean for ducted gas heating. If your ducted gas heating doesn't have a filter, well, that's a shame because it means all your ducts and everything are horribly full of dust, which can be another reason to not use the gas heating and get on to the air conditioners. All right, I've got more slides than I'll have time for tonight, so Karen will cut me off when we get there, but we probably won't get to the end of these, but here's hot water next. So the next thing, get a heat pump for the hot water. It's the same technology, heat pump technology, refrigerant technology, reverse cycle technology, whatever you want to call it. And this particular hot water system comes in two pieces. So it makes it very clear it's the same thing as a reverse cycle air conditioner. In heating mode, it extracts free heat from the air and puts it in your water. So that is very cheap hot water. Again, a third the cost of using gas. These other units are an all-in-one system where the heat pump air conditioner bit sits at the top of the water tank rather than it being in two pieces. And then again, now this is something you probably can do. If you get a hot water heat pump, mine's set on a timer, comes on at 11 o'clock every day, which is when I'm most likely to have a fair chunk of solar coming out of the solar panels, unless, you know, it's raining in Melbourne. So we use the electricity from the solar panels to run the hot water heat pump. So they only needs 800 watts, so less than a hairdryer. It'll run for 2 or 3 hours. It makes sure the whole tank is full of hot water, and then I'll have a shower at 6 o'clock the next morning, or when I get home tonight. So again, that's a way, kind of using your hot water heat pump as a battery, that you charge it up at noontime, and you can have the shower whenever you want. And again, if you can arrange it this way, this is practically free hot water to be using your solar panels and an efficient hot water heat pump like that. The gas industry can't compete. And again, there's thousands of dollars off from the combination of the federal government and the Victorian government coming to the party to help you to get a hot water heat pump. By the way, I'll be hanging around here tonight for other questions as long as anybody needs me if you want to get into the details for your home. This shows the graph. Maybe some of you are familiar with this. So this shows the graph of our solar system. So the gray is when the sun has come up and our solar system is producing. The blue squiggly line starts in the middle of the night. That's our house. That's the electricity we're using. It's the fridge coming on and off. until, we get into the morning, and then the gray, you see the solar starting to produce. And all that gray we're exporting, because we're not even home on this day. But you see that yellow spike in the middle. What is that? That's the hot water heat pump coming on in the middle of the day, using about 800 watts, like I said, to make sure there will be hot water when we do come back to the house. So that's, again, shows you how just with a 7 kilowatt system, it's kind of enormous to look after a hot water heat pump if the sun is shining. So there you go. But also, check out your shower heads. You really don't need to use more than 8 liters a minute with a good shower head to have a nice shower. So grab a bucket and make sure that your shower heads aren't excessive. All right, cooking. That's the other thing. Let's not burn stuff to cook. Gas cooking in the home contributes to 12% of childhood asthma and also other health issues, because when you burn gas in the home, it's giving off carbon monoxide, unburned methane, moisture, nitrous oxide, sulfur dioxide, benzene, formaldehyde, particulates, the whole thing. We don't need to do that in our homes anymore. I mean, my grandmother cooked over coal. She thought it was pretty cool. And then when the gas came out, everybody said, well, gas is cleaner than coal or wood, isn't it? How lovely. But we don't need to use the gas anymore either, because it does have its health effects, as well as potential safety effects. So there's, on the left is an induction cooktop. That's my wife doing some wok stir fry there on the induction. The induction is not the one on the right. That's just an old style electric resistive ceramic cooktop. They can be slow to start up. They get red hot. You burn yourself if you touch them. They're slow to adjust and slow to shut off. I mean, they're electric. They still work. But if you can organize an induction cooktop, which is the one on the left, they are much more responsive, very quick to heat up, almost too powerful sometimes. But yet you can move that pot away, the wok away, and touch the glass surface, and you wouldn't even burn yourself, because the induction is cooking with magnets. And so the magnet automatically turns the pot into the actual cooking element. And the magnet is not trying to heat up the glass. It's just trying to heat up the pot, which it does a really good job. So this morning I did it. So I thought I'd have a big breakfast before I went skiing. So I cooked some spinach and some tomatoes and some mushroom and the egg. But I always need to remember to, and I forgot this morning, I forgot, I got to put the toast down first, because I'll be done cooking all this stuff before the toast is ready. So I cooked all that, and I hadn't even started the toast. So, that was a shame this morning. But that's how quick it is. And here we see, it may be that, in your own particular home situation, it's going to take you a while to figure out how to do a permanent induction cooktop. And so we see some clever folks at the Facebook group, My Efficient Electric Home, where they're getting by with some portable induction cooktops until the time comes when they can make it permanent. And on the right here, this is an Asian restaurant in Melbourne where every table comes with its own portable induction cooktop. And there have even been, again, these are the portables, and there have even been some councils and others who have been making induction cooktops available in the library for a loan so that people can give it a try. But similar to the air conditioner, make sure the grease filter above in your range hood is clean, for any type of cooking. I mean, if you're on the gas cooking, make sure it's clean to try and get all those contaminants, the nitrous oxide, etc., out of the house. Crack a window open nearby, run the extraction fan hard, try to get the pollutants out of your house. But even if you were cooking with induction, you'd want to do the same thing. So keep that clean. And then get rid of the gas meter. And like I said, you pay $1 a day to be connected, so you don't have to do that anymore. I mentioned that I migrated to Australia to work in the gas industry. And in those days, it was like with BHP and Esso. And I'd go down to Longford or Sale, or you get on the helicopter, fly out to the platforms out in the Bass Strait. And, it was amazing. They discovered all that oil and all that gas like 59 years ago. And they looked down, they said, look, there's so much gas here, we could run an entire state, an entire city off of this gas for 60 years. And like I said, they discovered it 59 years ago. So the Victorian government's well aware of this, that we are on the last legs of the gas coming out of the Bass Strait. More and more of the gas that we'll be using in Victoria, if we keep using it like we always have, will come down the pipelines from the Queensland coal seam gas fields. So it goes all the way over there to Moomba and then comes down either to Sydney or to South Australia and then across to Victoria. So this is where our gas is going to be coming from in the future because we're in year 59, year 60 of the Bass Strait. And there's other crowds looking at bringing liquefied gas in by ship into Geelong. So that gas could come from the Queensland coal seam gas export facilities or from Western Australia, or it might come from Russia, who knows. But we do know it won't be cheap, and gas today can't compete with electrical technologies. They're sure not going to be competing in the future. This is just a picture that shows you what the coal seam gas fields look like up in Queensland. I mean, we used to be, down in the Bass Strait, as I said, with those platforms, you could drill 100 wells, you could produce a lot of oil and gas. Up here in the coal seam gas fields, they're not so productive, and it really is scraping the bottom of the barrel. So what they do have to do up there is drill 50,000 wells. So what do we see? We just see a handful of wells here. Multiply that by 50,000. That's what they're doing up in Queensland and parts of New South Wales. So this is where your gas will be coming from if you keep using it down here. But we got better options. And it was in the news over the last few weeks, perfect timing again. The authorities were saying, we're getting a cold week, and if anything should happen to fall over in the gas supply system, guess what? We got 6 hours before they'd have to start making some phone calls to start with to industry and say, look, back off on your gas use so that we can keep the gas flowing to, Warburton or wherever, or Healesville. Now, I think we're probably through that coldest period of the winter, and so we won't see these headlines again until next year. But next year, there'll be even less gas coming out of the Bass Strait, more gas coming down from the pipelines. They won't be bringing the gas in by ship to Geelong at that point in time just yet. And so again, next winter, we could be looking at a gas crisis. Alrighty, now that's all the gas stuff. There's other things in the book, other things to talk about in a home, the insulation, the windows, the draft proofing, because your home is like a leaky bucket. You try to put some heat in there, it's not a thermos bottle. And so as soon as you put the heat in, it's starting to leak out. So see what you can do to keep the heat in there. Insulation, this is a number one tip. If you've got a roof space and if you haven't looked up there for a while, you might think, Tim, you might say to me, Tim, I got insulation. I know I do. We put in the pink bats. Yeah, but you forgot that someone went up there to fix a roof leak. And then another person went up to change a light bulb. And then another person went in to install the NBN. And by this time, all your insulation that was on the right went over to the left, and all the insulation was on the left went over to the right, and no one put it back where it was meant to be. So I see this all the time where there is insulation up the roof space, but it's all been strewn about. Your insulation has to be perfect. If you've got a few little gaps, well, the whole purpose of the insulation is pretty much destroyed. The analogy I use is if it's a cold night and you've got a doona but your leg's hanging out, you're not going to have a good night's sleep. So the same way with your roof space, the insulation needs to be thick and perfect. Under floor and in walls, you can retrofit insulation if you can get under the floor, and there's companies that can blow in a fiberglass insulation into the walls, whether it's a brick building or a weatherboard. That's our weatherboard house that they're fixing up one wall for us with the blow-in insulation. Windows, of course, are also very important. A tip for some people, whether they're renters or homeowners, is bubble wrapping the windows. I mean, that's about the cheapest way to double glaze. It works. Get some bubble wrap and you spritz some water on the window and you can stick the bubble wrap to the glass. Boom, job done. You've double glazed, in a sense. My daughter was in a rental and my grandson's room was quite cold and we had all the condensation on the windows in the morning. So we bubble wrapped those windows, so no more condensation, and the room was a lot warmer. There wasn't a lot to see outside anyway, and it was a rental, so that was the one way for them to get through the winter. It works. I mean, our climate, it's not 20 below outside like it was where I grew up in America. It's not that cold. So anything we can do to our windows, whether it's bubble wrap or this cling wrap sort of approach, or secondary glazing with acrylic plastic, or finally the double glazing will do a good job. But also curtains and blinds will do a great job when you put them down at night. Draft proofing, yes, draft proof. Draft proofing your home can put you in better control of your air quality. Certainly during the horrible bushfires, from 2019, 2020, there was a bit of a rush on draft proofing because there was so much smoke about. People found they couldn't keep the smoke out of their house because their houses were leaky. So that can be a reason to draft proof is not only to keep the energy in, but also to keep the smoke out from the bushfire or from your neighbor's barbecue or whatever. Or, you know, closer to Melbourne, we've had a few factory fires lately. So you're better off if you can get through those disaster sort of situations by sitting in a house where it's relatively sealed up. But then you have to open up the windows, you know, appropriately to get, you know, the carbon dioxide that you've breathed out of the house and other contaminants, and also managing moisture is important. Otherwise, you can have issues with the condensation and the mold. So managing moisture is an important thing, which I cover in the book. One little tip is do not hang laundry around the house to dry with the windows closed, because that can put excessive moisture into the home. It occurs to my wife and myself, we never saw people hang laundry around the house till we moved to Melbourne. And some people say, well, I thought it was efficient. And sure, I mean, with those old style clothes dryers, they're pretty horrible. They're about 1 Energy Star. And so you don't want to use those either. They just, you know, unless it's vented to the outside, it just spews moisture in your face. But fortunately, these days they've invented very efficient 7 to 10 star heat pump condensing clothes dryers, which condense all the moisture into a bin so you can put it down the drain. So this is me draining the moisture that we collected from a load of laundry. It's like a liter of water, which, you know, can have a tremendous impact on the amount of humidity in the home. So yeah, don't hang the laundry around. Rather, get yourself a heat pump condensing clothes dryer. And I think that's probably where I can stop. Yeah, that's close enough. Good. All right. Thank you very much. Oh yeah, buy the book. We got a bookseller outside, so don't let her go home with any copies.
Testing. Oh, there I am. Thank you so much, Tim. That was an awful lot to take in. So if you do have any questions, just a reminder to write them down, and you will have a chance to have a chat with Tim afterwards. Are we ready for Kate at some stage? It's a little bit early. Yeah, okay, lovely. So our next presenter is going to magically appear there. And it's Kate Minter. She's the Managing Director of a really great company, organisation called Rewiring Australia. Now, I only stumbled across this organisation a couple of years ago when I read Saul Griffith's book called The Big Switch. And that's also, their vision is that Australia could really lead the way by transitioning over to electric appliances and electric vehicles. Yep, she's there. Good. And
sorry.
Hello, Kate. So yes, that's what their vision is. I think Australia could lead the way. And what else was I going to say? I can't remember now. So I might just. Oh yes, they also advocate to government, and they work with. Hello, Kate. And they work with other community renewable energy groups like Healesville Core, and they're trying to just sort of connect us all across Australia. There's so many groups like ours around, and Rewiring Australia kind of acting as an umbrella group to connect us so we can all work together. And anyway, she's here now, so let's see how this goes. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Karen. Sorry for my testing happening over your introduction. I didn't mean to be a distraction. Thank you so much for facilitating me being able to speak remotely to you all. I'm calling in from Corner Country in Adelaide tonight. I'm usually based on the East Coast in Sydney, but I'm down in Adelaide for the week, so dialing in online. And it's been fantastic to listen to Tim as well. I also give a plug to his book. I've been racing through it, and it's a fantastic read and really enjoy it. So yeah, I'm from Rewiring Australia. I've got some slides for you today. I'm going to be starting with a bit of an introduction of myself and what we do at Rewiring Australia, giving you a bit of a spiel on why we should electrify, but I think Tim's made a pretty compelling case already, how we can electrify, And then the work that we do that Karen referred to around electrification for everyone, and the advocacy work we do on how we need to partner with governments at all levels to make electrification accessible for everyone. And then I'm really hoping the tech holds up for me to be able to do a Q&A session with Tim as well. So Rewiring Australia, we're a fairly new not-for-profit, so we've only been around for a couple of years, and our focus is on research and advocacy, representing people and households in the energy transition, but how can we electrify everything as fast and as fair as we can? So I've been working with the team for about 2 years. When we first started, I have spent the last 15 years working with different membership-based organisations on pressing social justice issues and campaigns. And this is the fight of our time in terms of how do we decarbonise and how do we make sure that it's a transition that everyone can benefit in. I'm the daughter of an electrician and the granddaughter of an electrician, so sometimes I like to just pretend I'm a little bit of an electrician, carrying on the family tradition in electrifying everything. So our work is focused around 4 key pillars. Advocacy, so how do we take the case to governments to encourage investment in electrification, but also reforms to the energy system to ensure that it delivers for households and energy users. We do a lot of education and empowerment, so working with a lot of fantastic community groups around the country, including the guys in Healesville, around how do we use community action to drive electrification. Some deployment work, so looking at what it actually means to see communities and households be electrified and what are the tech learnings, and research. So our research is underpinned by data, and I think Tim mentioned that he only had one graph. I promised to make up the graph quota because I've got a lot of graphs for you tonight around the data and what that tells us in part of the story of the savings we can benefit, but also the pathway of how we get to zero emission communities and homes. So I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with our work through our co-founder, Saul Griffith, who is an engineer, scientist, energy expert, and just all-round visionary. He's very inspiring to listen to, talk about the opportunities that we have in this transition. He co-founded Rewiring Australia, but also Rewiring America in the US, and worked closely with the Biden administration on investment and fast-tracking electrification and decarbonisation in the States. As Karen mentioned, he's written a book, The Big Switch, which I also encourage you to all read if you haven't had a chance already. Before I dive into the Australian context, just touching quickly on the US Inflation Reduction Act. My slide's a little out of date. Sorry, Matt, can I get you to jump to the next slide? This slide's a little out of date because it's about 18 months ago now that the Americans passed the Inflation Reduction Act, but this was the largest investment we've ever seen in climate change responses in the world. And so it was an investment of $369 billion, but that's an uncapped amount, so we could see that investment increase as more people take up the incentives that are within that legislation. And it provides the private sector with about $240 billion worth of investment in clean tech, and really designed to kickstart what that investment looks like and the jobs growth that can come from that, with an expected 170,000 new jobs, which will grow over the decade. A real focus on battery manufacturing and EVs, which are planned to the strengths in the States, but also wind and solar. At the household front, though, is where Rewiring America had done a lot of their advocacy and saw some really exciting results. So just go to the next slide as well. Thank you. So the $30,000 in tax credits to electrify homes. So providing incentives for people to make their next appliance electric, which is projected to save around $38 billion in the electricity bills of Americans over the next decade, and make an important contribution to the reduction of greenhouse gases over the next decade. So Rewiring America did a lot of advocacy work to see that bill brought into into the Congress in the States, but now they're doing a lot of work on trying to convince Americans of the benefits of taking up what's available through those tax credits, which is a huge job trying to communicate to millions of homes why they need to make the switch and the benefits in the long term in a reduced running costs for them to electrify, but also in the short term in terms of reducing their taxable incomes. So that's a bit of an introduction. I'm going to jump down to why we need to electrify everything. And Tim touched on this earlier, but looking at these graphs, we can see that the kinds of action that we need to take to address climate change need to happen quickly. The graph on the left, and I apologise, it's probably a graph that is designed, if you're in front of the computer, it can actually zoom in. But it shows that green line is the massive reduction in carbon emissions that we need to see in order to keep ourselves on track for 1.5 degrees of warming. I'm reading the latest quarterly essay at the moment, and it's pretty bleak. It looks like we've mostly lost our pathway to 1.5 degrees warming, but we need to do everything we can to arrest further warming. And that requires going hell for leather these next 10 years and looking at the large emissions that we need to cut over the next 10 years, but also over the next 5 to keep ourselves on track for a livable planet. When we look at what Australia's emissions are driven by, we can see that traditionally we've split those across the emissions that are connected to exports and the emissions that are connected to domestic emissions. Once we look at the domestic emissions a little further, and that's the graph on the right, we can see that households are contributing to about 42% of those emissions. These are decisions that are made around the dining room table, around the kinds of way we heat our homes, how we transport ourselves, and these are decisions that we can have a significant impact on reducing our emissions over the next decade. Energy, of course, is a key part of what those emissions are and where we have so much opportunity to reduce greenhouse emissions. And so we look at kind of that challenge of how do we drastically decrease our emissions reductions in the dual challenge we face around a cost of living crises. When we look at household annual expenditure, this is data drawn from the ABS. Households are spending about $80,000 a year on average, of which $5,000 of that is contributed to energy costs. And so part of the challenge that we face, that we see as an opportunity as well at Rewiring Australia, is how can we pair emissions reductions with energy bill savings? And a big part of that is how do we shift our looking from the supply side to the demand side. A lot of our discussions about emissions reductions look at the big machines on the supply side, the transmission lines, the large scale energy generation, and the larger supply side machines. And we've got millions of machines sitting in homes and businesses across the country where there is opportunities to shift to renewables and to shift to far more efficient machines that are going to save money in the long term and be able to be powered from efficient, clean energy, not dirty fossil fuels. Now, this next slide I've got, I realised after I'd sent them across, has a slight typo on it, so ignore all the text on the left side, that shouldn't be there, and just focus on this graph, which looks at energy prices over the last several decades. And we can see that this is energy costs for a home that's being powered part by grid electricity, part by gas. And we can see that electricity prices are inflationary, but they're also incredibly volatile. There's a few spikes in there. Some of them are based on COVID when we're spending more time at home. Another one in there is the Ukraine war when we saw gas prices skyrocket. We're looking at an incredibly unreliable and increasing cost of living. The red dotted line is the CPI and how it's projected to go forward, or energy costs going forward over time. The cost price index is incredibly influenced by energy prices, so you can see that trend line is following it up. But if you were to take a home, replace the gas within that home and the petrol car with efficient electric versions that are powered by rooftop solar and supported by a battery, you take the volatility out of those energy costs, and over the lifetime you can embed about $42,000 worth of savings in running costs. And so we see this as the huge opportunity of why we should electrify. We need to save our planet, but we also have a huge opportunity to lock in those savings. We're also the lucky country. Australia has an incredible head start compared to the rest of the world. So this is a graph that compares grid. So I'm going to get a bit closer to you so I can read what my caption says. Grid electricity prices compared to rooftop solar. We have some of the cheapest rooftop solar in the world and some of the best adoption rates there is. This is an incredible base to build on in terms of locking in the savings of going electric. So just to recap on the next slide, in terms of the benefits from households, which I know that Tim's run through as well. I'm sorry, Tim, I feel like I'm repeating a lot of the great points that you've made. But we've got cheaper bills. Modelling that we've conducted shows savings between $3,000 and $5,000 a year. We also have healthier and safer homes, greater energy independence, and a reduced carbon footprint. When we zoom out and look across communities, we see that communities are more resilient, a more responsive grid, greater job creation. We're not sending money offshore to foreign oil companies. We're being able to keep that in communities, hiring electricians and seeing money stay within communities and support local economies. So that's the why. I'm jumping into the how now, and I won't spend too much time on this because there's been far more practical guides provided tonight. But as I mentioned, electrification and the opportunities of this are decisions that are based around dinner tables, how we cook our food, how we get to work, where we buy electricity, and how we heat our homes and water. I feel like this next slide is something you'll all already know quite well, but an electrified home gets off fossil fuels. It replaces gas hot water heaters with heat pump hot water heaters, space heating using heat pumps as well, electric cooking, electric vehicles, rooftop solar and battery storage. And electrification is efficiency. Here's another complex graph for you all on a Monday night. But if you look at the energy used, there is far less energy being used in an electric home because the appliances that are replacing old gas, fossil fuel machines are far more efficient. You will see the average household using far less energy in their homes. A big saving in that efficiency is really around electric vehicles as well. And I have a few appliance by appliance graphs, keeping to my promise about a graph quota. So looking at the lifetime running costs of different appliances, we've pulled together some modelling across a 15-year lifespan of these appliances. And you can see there the gas option is by far the most expensive, and it steps down. The yellow are the better options that are going to be using electric. And if you're being able to power off solar supported by a battery, you are substantially reducing the costs of that machine over its lifetime. I've got the same for space heating, shifting from gas heating or LPG at the highest to gas to reverse cycle air conditioners. The same with cooktops. There's less of an efficiency gain with your cooktops, but they are also the machine that's being used a lot less in terms of its overall energy use over its lifetime. But there are still substantial savings with cooktops, and certainly looking at the home and the air quality improvements there, there's a real benefit. And finally, in cars, we're seeing the lifetime running costs, particularly if a car is able to be charged on solar, substantially cheaper. On the next slide, in terms of what this looks like for a household, and Patricia referred to this earlier, electrifying a home doesn't mean going out, ripping everything out and doing it all tomorrow. It's about putting together a plan for your cold shower day. The time that someone's in the market for a new hot water heater is the day that their shower break or the hot water heater breaks and they don't want to have a cold shower that night. So making these plans across the next 10 years or 10, 15 years and replacing things at their end or near end of life is the plans that every household needs to put together. And different plans will depend on what your household looks like and where those appliances are at. Once we look at how these combine across multiple households, we start to see how our communities are able to hit the emission reduction targets that we need to see. So the graph in that bottom right-hand corner is the one earlier around the kind of drastic reductions we need to see in emissions in order for us to keep on target for a limited degree warming in the world. And so no matter what a household's pathway is, we can see that across the community, they're all contributing to the broader goal. But our work at Rewiring Australia is really focused as well on how do we help everyone electrify. When we look at the changes that we need to make across the appliances that exist within homes, there are 1 million new gas appliances being sold every year. However, we're also partway there. If we look at this graph, we can see in blue, these are the existing installations. These are the already electric machines. We can see the great track record we have on solar, but we can see we're kind of around halfway there for cooking, heating, and hot water and air conditioning. And there's a huge opportunity around what we've got to get to on EV charging and batteries, but it's a job partway done. But we need to make sure that every home has the opportunity to electrify. In one of our communities that we work with in the northern Illawarra, in a postcode called 2515, we did a survey of 1,500 residents and asked them what are their barriers to electrification. The number one was the upfront cost. It costs a lot of money to replace your appliances. And currently, if you look at the machines, it's cheaper to go like for like. If your gas hot water heater carks it, it's cheaper to replace it with another gas one as opposed to removing that infrastructure in terms of the upfront capital costs. That will change over time, particularly as gas products become more rare. But the upfront costs are a real barrier for a lot of people. Those upfront costs are smoothed over the lifetime of the product when you see much lower running costs that cancel out the extra money paid up front. But that is a barrier. The other is a lack of knowledge and trust, and I think great work of local councils of how they build those trusted resources. But that's certainly been a barrier that we've found people face in starting their electrification journey. I think My Efficient Electric Home has also done wonders in terms of giving people trusted advice and alleviating those concerns and knowing where to start. Current machine doesn't need replacing is the next one. The next two are real challenges that we focus a lot of our advocacy work onto though, which is renters and people who live in apartments. I'm a renter in Sydney, and like in many parts of the country, you don't have a lot of rights as a renter, and it's a pretty competitive market. So I'll jump to in a moment some of the advocacy work we've been doing, but it's critically important that we find solutions for renters and that we lean on governments to help empower renters to be able to live in healthy, warm homes that are powered by renewable energy. Strata is a challenge as well, but I think there's also some key opportunities when we look at strata. There's some great stories I've heard of strata buildings getting together and organising for their old centralised gas boiler to be replaced with an electric heat pump, and it actually being a really positive investment in terms of the savings being generated in usage costs, but also in the upfront capital, because the heat pump's going to have a longer lifespan than the gas boiler would have, and it provides a far more reliable machine within the apartment complex as well. Another one is time. It takes time to research these and investigate the solutions, and time to organise the sparkies to come and do the work. So our approach to how we attack some of these barriers that we find, and I spoke through some then, but is both a top-down and a bottom-up. We call for the big changes that we see the federal government and state governments needing to make in order to enable electrification that is efficient and equitable. But it's also about bottom up. We can't place pressure on governments to do things unless we can demonstrate that it's something that people want to see happen and people want to see action taken. So we do a lot of work with groups around the country telling stories around the benefits people have had from electrification and the opportunities around job creation, but also raising awareness around the benefits of electrification and those real life stories. I've seen a lot of graphs of people's savings that they've been able to generate across their home, and they tell a very compelling story. As you might have picked, though, I am someone who does like to communicate through graphs and numbers. But in terms of advocacy, our key asks are around everyone being able to afford to electrify. So we've done some work putting together a proposal that we've taken to the federal government and state governments around an Electrify Everything loan scheme. The proposal for us, we think, could look like homes being able to take out a loan the federal government supports, where they can electrify everything and not worry about repayments until the next time that they sell their home. We think that would be a great way to take away the risks of upfront costs or the concerns that people have, and just delay the costs of electrifying everything to a time when you've had an opportunity to reap the benefits of the cost savings over the lifetime. Of course, though, we're open up to other discussions around what concessional finance or other loan schemes could look like that would incentivise people to take out loans that help them to electrify and offset those costs. But in our advocacy, we think it's incredibly important that these are accessible to people, particularly those on lower incomes or who might not have access to conventional credit products. And I mentioned earlier, renter reform is critical. It needs to come with a suite of rental reform that is really begging at the moment to provide greater protection for renters. But our real focus is on what that means for energy performance in a home. And we think a mandatory disclosure that lets tenants know when they're signing up to rent a house, what are the expected running costs of that home and what are its star rating? How is it performing? How is its energy performing? Because it's one thing to, have a budget of how much you can afford to pay rent, but it's not till you move in and 3 months later that you can see that you're paying 3 times what you're expecting to pay an electricity bill, because it's running on incredibly inefficient machines, and it's also incredibly poorly insulated, which is the case of so many rental properties. And we're also working on broader electricity market reform. We need fairer systems for our households. As we make a transition, we rely increasingly on rooftop solar. We need to see households reap the benefits of that investment in the same way we have investment returns locked in for the large-scale generators of electricity. So it's about ensuring that producers of energy, which households have become with rooftop solar, are getting a fair deal for the energy that they're producing. And for us, these asks are really driven by community action. So here's a few snapshots of some of the groups that my colleague Kristen has been working with across the country, and a range of different activities that they undertake. We've got in the top left, sorry, my words are escaping me. It's late on the Friday afternoon or evening. In the top left-hand corner, we've got the guys from Electrify the Valley over in Fremantle in Western Australia, who are doing some fantastic education projects over in the west, and have really started building quite a network of different electrification groups within the local areas of Perth. There's Electrify Adelaide in the middle in the blue shirts. Here's some pictures of them doing cooking demonstrations on cooktops. Sorry, I've just lost the word. Induction cooktops. And then we've got a smoothie being made on an electric bike. And in the bottom left-hand corner, you might recognise the Energy Minister, Chris Bowen, there with one of our representatives from Electrify Canberra. And so the work that these groups have been doing covers a broad breadth of activity, including workshops and education sessions, one-on-one advice, and of course advocacy, taking the message to local governments, state governments and federal governments on the reforms that we need to see to enable electrification. And I was quite excited to hear about the work Patricia talked about at the beginning of today's session around the resources that councils have been putting together and connecting with information on the available rebates and helping people make plans. When it comes to electrification and upgrades, the barrier around not knowing who to trust. I think local governments are the most trusted arm of government, and being able to see electrification education campaigns being spearheaded by those groups will hopefully do some great things to rise adoption rates as well. But that's all I have, just a whirlwind of a run through. But thank you so much for having me. I look forward to some questions. We would love you to check out our work, but also there's a QR code on the screen for you to join our email list and stay up to date in the work that we're doing around electrification too. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kate. That was absolutely amazing. You do some fantastic work there. I'd just like to invite Tim and Patricia to come up now, and we'll start the next part of the evening, which is our Q&A session. That's yours here. All right then. So we've had a lot of information there, a lot to take in, and I'm sure we've got one or two questions. So does anybody want to kick it off tonight? Oh, there's a hand over there, yes. Can I just stop you there? Kate, are you able to hear that? Or do we need the microphone? She's gone. Are you able to hear the questions?
Sorry, I am here. I'm just having a drink of water.
Sorry.
I haven't.
It is late in the night. Just wondering if you're able to hear the audience questions, or we need the microphone.
Yeah, the microphone. I couldn't hear the clapping either, but I could see it, so thank you.
Lovely.
I'm just wondering whether you know if the energy upgrades program, if you can only have one air conditioning unit under that program, or if you can have multiple.
There's the upgrade program. Do you want that one? No? So the mic's there.
Thanks, Tim.
What I usually say to folks is get some quotes from different air conditioning people who chances are they have signed up with the state program so they can offer those rebates, and they should be across the details for, once they see, what you may be interested for your property and what you've got there today, they should be across the rules of that sort of thing. So I just added to the list of things that hopefully the air conditioning people can advise you on, at least initially. And then once you get some information from them, you could cross-check it in various ways, whether you want to get onto My Efficient Electric Home is one. I'm not sure if the council could help with vetting what the suppliers have to say. But they should be doing this sort of thing every day by now. Because it's a big dollar savings that is possible, and so it's suddenly become an important part of their business to be able to offer all that.
I can add to that quickly. So the program I presented, Solar Savers, will be able to answer that specifically because they also provide split systems. So I'm unsure of the answer, but they're a great resource to reach out to.
Uh,
I can just add that we did our ducted heating. We just changed that over, and we got 3 air cons, kind of like 1 outdoor unit with 3 internal heads as part of the rebate. So if you want to get off central ducted heating, then yeah, you can get up to 3 heads, I think, from the rebates.
Thanks for that. Any other questions? There we go. Scotty in the middle there.
Hi, Graham Scott. I live in an off-grid house, just sort of where I come from, but there's been a lot of talk about going to electrifying the houses. If the current rate of going to electric houses stays the same, which it should get greater, it's at 42. We'll need 42% more electricity by 2050. And currently, right now in Victoria, because 82% of our electricity is coming out of brown coal and gas. And as far as I know, we've got a third of what we've got now coming out of going into solar panels in Victoria. No batteries. The state's broke, so we're not going to get anything more. So where do you all see all of this power being generated if we all turn electric? Cars, houses. I know our house is electric consumption because we're off-grid. But our country, our state especially, is not going to be able to produce enough electricity to power what you're talking about today.
I'll start with that one because I probably have the least to say. I just come back to, you can heat your house with 1/3 the cost with an air conditioner than gas. So yeah, those are big important questions. And yeah, the authorities and all of that have to have a plan that's going to work. But I come back to, you can heat your house with an air conditioner for a lot less. So why, don't hold off just because of concerns about the bigger plan. Yes, others need to be figuring out that bigger plan. In the short term, the traditional peak use of electricity for Victoria, was midsummer, when people would turn the air conditioners on for summer cooling. So the electricity supply system for Victoria has kind of all been set up to get through, one hot day in the summer. So this electrification that we do in the winter, there's what you call headspace, that we're not really stressing the system in the winter time by electrifying. But yeah, your concerns and questions are all completely valid, and I hope that the authorities are going to have some full plans on all of that. I do know that there are big batteries in place in Victoria now. I think you might have said no batteries. We've got some, and yeah, we need more. Yeah, the state does have its financial issues, but often what they're able to do is, for these investments to incentivize private companies to be building these things, so it doesn't all have to come back to the government. They have mechanisms to make it happen. Yeah, it all has to be paid for one way or the other, but I should probably stop because mostly all I do is help people to improve their homes.
Did you want to add to that, Kate?
Look, I mentioned earlier, and to echo Tim's points and agree with everything Tim said, we will see efficiency gains as we move towards electricity. And there are broader projects happening around large scale and building a greater supply of renewable as we see more fossil fuel generation come offline. But certainly rooftop solar and community solar will play an increasing role. We're 1/3 of the way, which is an incredible head start, but there is so much more opportunity to put solar in local communities all over everything, and also to support that with localised batteries, and obviously the larger scale batteries are being looked at too, and we're seeing technological developments continuing that will make that more reliable, but also really help us reach those needs. And when we look at EVs particularly, people are going to be driving around with batteries that can power your home for 3 days within electric vehicles as we begin to get vehicle to grid and vehicle to home technology advanced. But I think as well there is a bit of a behavioural change around how we use energy and trying to move more of our energy consumption into that solar window so that as we see more solar on rooftops and in communities, we are taking full advantage of when we are producing electricity within our local areas to also be using that at the same time. And there's technology to assist with that, but there's also just some broader behavioural changes and simple timers to make the most of our increased energy use, but also matching that when we're increasing our consumption within community, our production within communities as well.
Thanks for that. Any more questions from anybody? Over here. Or maybe over here first. Yep.
How old should a split system be before you need to replace it in terms of technology?
How old what? How old what?
How old should a split system be before you need to replace it for efficient technology?
Yeah, I guess the answer I often use there is when you don't like it anymore. For example, I've got a 1999 Jackaroo out here. It still runs. But at some point, I'm going to get rid of it because the door locks don't work or the lights have gone out on the dashboard. And the same thing can be true with a split system. It's starting to rattle, it is making a bit of noise, and it is 20 years old. So yeah, if it's, one way to look is try to figure out what refrigerant it's using, and it can say on the outside unit. So R22 is some fairly ancient stuff. So if your air conditioner is R22, it might be 30 years old, and that R22 was the stuff that if released into the atmosphere would destroy the ozone layer. So those you shouldn't be at all worried about replacing. They're past their use by date. Then the next refrigerant was R410. And so if you're on 410, if your refrigerant is R410, but you really don't like your air conditioner anymore, I give you permission also to upgrade, because it's probably 20 years old, and you will upgrade to air conditioners these days that use R32 refrigerant. And each time they get more efficient and more capable and a bit quieter. And the refrigerants don't destroy the ozone layer anymore, but they do have a global warming potential. But the R32 has less of a global warming potential than the R410. But on the other hand, if your air conditioner does use R410, but it seems to be working fine, then keep using it, for another 5, 8 years or whatever, until you get to the point that you don't like it anymore. But these things, yeah, they should fairly easily last 20 years. We've got our air cons now, they're already, so they went in and, so it's as old as the Facebook group, 9 years old. They seem brand new, so I'm sure they're going to last another 9 or 10 years. And but I haven't seen any refrigerants come along. Well, the refrigerants we'll be using past R32 won't have the potential for the global warming potential. So that'll be the next upgrade that we'll see, but they're not widely on the market yet. So we'll wait for those.
Another question up here. G'day. If you want to replace a ducted gas central heating with electric air conditioning, so on, can you use the same ducts, and what's involved in that? And do you have to have an electrician and a plumber there at the same time to do that? Or
There are businesses these days in Melbourne anyway, and maybe they reach out here, or you've got locals as well who have realized there's a big business opportunity in this transition. So out there you'll find businesses like with the names of like Get Off Gas, Goodbye Gas, All Electric Homes, Pure Electric, and they will be able to offer. And we also have the crowd that the council's working with as well through the Solar Savers. So they will be able to have the plumbers and the electricians to do everything that's needed in this transition. But getting back to just a ducted heating system, chances are you'll replace the ducts. First off, you should check and see if you've had a filter in there. If you don't have a filter, then everything's pretty full of dust anyway. often when they're putting in a new heating system, in order to offer the warranties, they're going to want to give you new ducts so that they, are fully across everything and can give you the warranties. And then also, if you're going from a ducted gas heating to a ducted reverse cycle heating and cooling system, you're probably going to need bigger ducts for the summer cooling service. And so, yeah, you're probably looking at new ducts, and they're probably bigger ducts. There's another hour of me talking about heating and cooling on YouTube at the Renew YouTube channel, if you want to just hear me talk about heating and cooling. What I try to work with clients to do often is to not have to have a ducted system. So we used to have ducted gas heating. I put it in 1994, but these days we heat just with 2 reverse cycle air conditioners. So if you can figure out a way not to have ducts, that can be the lowest upfront cost and the most efficient way to operate. One thing about a ducted heating system, or you could call it central heating and cooling, is you're pretty much meant to have the whole house open when you're using such a system, because if you put heat into an individual room, the air needs to get back to the central return. And I find a lot of people in their homes don't understand that, and they'll close doors. So like a room now may be a home office, and you're going to be on a Zoom call, so you're going to close the door. Well, that really corrupts the way that a ducted heating system can work. So you better chop the bottom off the door, or put a vent in the doors so that air can get out of that home office back to the central return. And same way, if you've got a young child, an infant who's sleeping in a room, you might close the door. You've corrupted the central heating system. Or a teenager went into a bedroom never to come out again. That can be a reason that a ducted system doesn't necessarily work. So see what you can do with individual split systems, or like the multi-head we heard about before. That way every room can, you can dial up whatever climate conditions you want in individual rooms. So ducted is not necessarily the way to go if you can avoid it. We don't do ducts well in this country. We just put them in the roof space, or we hang them under the floor where the animals can get at them. In other parts of the world, colder parts of the world, they will put the ducts inside the so-called thermal envelope of the building, which makes a lot more sense. But here we don't do ducts very well, so if you can avoid them, you'll be in a more efficient situation.
Would you know if anyone is planning currently to replace home batteries by EV batteries?
Replace home batteries with EV batteries. In the book, I say that probably the first battery most homes are going to have is one that's going to drive up on the driveway there with 4 wheels. The battery in an electric vehicle is 6 or 7 times bigger than a home battery. And the economics for home batteries, you can't really get a great economic return on a home battery right at the moment. It'd be good if they could get a lot cheaper. But on the other hand, more and more of my clients, I'm going into their homes and they've already got electric vehicles. I don't. I'm falling behind. My wife is cracking the whip. So we're probably going to go down to the car shops and have a look around. But yes, what we're waiting for is the technology where we can run the grid off of our car batteries, as we were hearing about before. There was a trial recently that was underway at ANU, and they had a whole bunch of cars lined up, and sure enough, when the storm came through there at Geelong and blew over the power lines, and there was a bit of a blip in the system, all these cars up in Canberra contributed to the system during that power outage in a very tiny way, because of course it was just an initial trial. But yeah, we do look forward to the day where we can run our houses, run the grid off of our cars. It's coming. They're working on it. It seems like it's always 2 years away, but hopefully it'll be coming within another couple of years. But if you are in the market for an electric car, you might look at those that seem like they'll be better able to connect up to this system if it does show up in a couple of years. And maybe some other comments from others about the whole
I'd echo everything that you just said, Tim, on that. I think it's a huge opportunity, and that's what we'll see. A lot of people's first experience of home batteries will be the one on wheels.
Yeah, sorry, I'll hand it over in a sec. Just a quick question. I know there's a lot of discussion around shading on solar panels and for efficiencies, and just looking at that the capacity, then going into the payback period for your investment, all that sort of thing. We, in the Yarra Valley here, we're covered in fog for half of the day, and then the rest of the year we're covered in dust. So I'm just wondering, is there any research or any information around the impact on the efficiency of the solar panels from fog and dust?
I guess what we see at my efficient electric home is if we've had a dust storm or something, and I mean, I'm not talking about horrific dust like further out toward the desert or whatever, but in the more populated areas of Australia, yeah, we get our dust storms, and people clean them off, and they'll see, a small improvement in the production of the panels, maybe like 5% or something. So it's, even though it's pretty covered with dust, it's amazing. It doesn't seem to make that much of an impact, or the improvement isn't that great when they clean them off. Sure, you should, get the lichen, the algae off the panels every year or so. And yeah, if you can clean them, why do it? But if you're not able to clean them, it's not necessarily the end of the world production-wise. But on the other hand, yeah, I work with a fair few clients, and they may be looking at the solar, but it's not necessarily the case that the solar is the most important thing that they should be spending money on in a home. So if you don't have solar, and if you think like your weather conditions aren't that great, or you got a big tree or whatever, something shading you, don't be sad. You can still tap into renewable energy by heating a home with a reverse cycle air conditioner. It gets free renewable heat out of the air. And same way with a hot water heat pump. You get renewable energy credits from the federal government for a hot water heat pump because they're smart enough to realize it gets free renewable heat out of the air. So you don't have to have solar panels on your roof to be tapping into solar energy. And the other thing we're seeing in Victoria as well is that there are some electricity deals, and one supplier is like OVO, where they're practically giving you free electricity for 3 or 4 hours in the middle of the day, not because you have solar, but because your neighbors do. Or really there's a fair bit of solar on the system. I mean, we need a lot more in the future, but even presently we've got a wholesale electricity market, and at times electricity prices actually go negative, and that's why OVO can make money by giving you electricity for free. So again, if you don't have a great roof, or you got a big tree, or you're worried about dust or fog or whatever, maybe solar doesn't necessarily make sense for you. There may be plenty of other things to spend money on in your house, plus you may sign up with a particular electricity supplier that can give you the advantages of solar even if you don't have any.
That's all great advice, and I can recommend a really good book I've just finished reading. It's by the guy who does solar quotes. It's called The Good Solar Guide, and he actually does say right at the beginning, solar might not work for everybody, and you do need to consider shading and all those sorts of things. So that might be worth investigating that book too. Okay, did you have anything else that you wanted to add to that solar? And
just to echo that point around solar being able to benefit people who don't just have it on their roofs, and I think that links to the advocacy work that needs to continue in New South Wales. For instance, our off-peak is still in the middle of the night, when really our off-peak periods for electricity, where we should be getting the cheapest electricity and even free electricity, should be in that solar window, and those kinds of changes to how our energy system works is what will see those behavioural shifts from us being able to use our entire system more efficiently, and people being able to save money, and then to that point also just pushing for more things like solar gardens and localised solar production on top of schools and car parks and community centres, to really drive the benefits that can be shared across the community. And Kristen was telling me, actually my colleague, that there's been some great community infrastructure projects in Healesville around putting solar on community assets and around the community. So yeah,
there has been. Thanks for that. Any other questions? Or up to you. Yep.
Yeah, Murray Harding, Joel living Badger Creek Road. About 5 years ago I put solar panels up and was feeding back into the grid. Over the last 5 years, found that the rebate was dropping. So I've got I have two lots of power feed. One was for commercial, for our office and workshop, and the other one was for the home. I decided over 12 months ago that I would go full solar, which I have done. I've got about 4 days of backup power in batteries. problem I've got now is that I'm actually losing about 34 to 35% power in from the solar panels because of shading from trees on the Shire boundary of the property. I did contact the Shire about getting the trees trimmed. I said I'm prepared to pay for it. They said bugger off, excuse my expression. They wouldn't let me trim the trees. So what do I do about that? Where I've gone full solar, I'm running 4 split air cons, reverse cycles. I've got now getting shading from the trees from the side of Tura Crescent, and I'm losing solar. Another quick question too, from out of interest, if anyone does go full solar and they want to get the power company to remove the power, which they won't, after a lot of discussions with them, they said, no, you'll still have the service fee. The previous quarter before I went full solar was $1,300 a quarter for our power. I rang them up and said, I've sold the property, come and do a meter reading. So they did that in June last year. I haven't heard them back from them since.
Might hand over to Patricia for the first part of your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very good question. I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that, but if you come up to me after tonight's session, I'll take down your details and I'll speak to the relevant council team and find out the response, because it's a very valid question. Yeah. Yeah, let's have a chat after.
Get some exercise then.
Yeah, hi there. You mentioned OVO, I think it was before, and I guess from what I'm hearing, particularly in your situation and also in mine, there's always some purchasing that needs to be done of electricity from the grid, unless we're not off-grid. So I guess the question is in two parts. Rate is obviously important, and there's a myriad of different rates out there depending on providers. The second aspect is some of the, I'll say so-called green potential or green credibility that some of these organisations tout. Greenwashing is obviously a term that's used pretty widely these days. Is there a third party that actually can rate the green credentials of some of these organisations from that point of view, forgetting about rates? That's sort of a standalone comparison. But is there someone that actually does the analysis of green credentials of some of the providers?
Yeah, there had been a thing called the Green Electricity Guide, and I think maybe Greenpeace and the University of Technology Sydney or someone was involved with that, and I'm not sure how often they update it, but that's something to Google for. I mean, if PowerShop's still at the top, it's out of date because PowerShop got bought by Shell. I'm with a not-for-profit called CoPower, so that's one option you could go with. I also recommend another supplier, Momentum. That's Hydro Tasmania, so it's owned by the Tasmanian government, and I mean their electricity, you know, unless you buy green power, their electricity is no greener than anybody else's. It's just off the grid, but they are Hydro Tasmania anyway, and they don't tend to do that discounting game, or they tend to have more stable prices rather than fooling around with them so often, so that's a plus. And I think in previous years they sponsored the Geelong Cats, so that was good too. Sure, I've got one up here.
Oh, thank you. Just a small side there. I know we're talking about changing from, or not tossing out the gas and getting the electricity. Just getting back to our friend there about the ducted heating, we found that when we change over our ducted heating, almost a third of what you generate is actually lost under the house before it comes in. So although those units are relatively easy to install, they're horribly expensive to run. So I think my thing is that should get rid of all the ducting, any hot ducting, and change over to possibly hydronic heating or something, and then run that with reverse cycle or heat pump rather than gas?
Yes, I think you're supporting what I said there before about ducts. But with respect to hydronic heating, most everybody, if they have hydronic heating, it's going to be gas-fired at the present time. You can get heat pumps that can heat the water for the hydronic heating. But what hydronic heating doesn't do very well is it doesn't cool your house very well in summer. So there have been cases of folks where they looked at the hydronic heating and they decided they didn't need it, rather they could just get by with reverse cycle air conditioners. And my son's house was a case in point. He bought a house in Mentone. It came with gas-fired hydronic heating, but it also had 3 air conditioners down one side. So the first thing we did was remove the gas-fired hydronic heating and had it thoughtfully recycled. And then we put 2 more air conditioners down the other side of the house for another couple bedrooms. So there's a house with 5 air conditioners. And it wasn't a big house, so my daughter-in-law was happy to get the wall space back where there had been the hydronic radiators. So I'm not a big supporter of hydronic heating. It can be expensive to set up if that's where you're thinking of going. And I say to folks, if you build like a house that's at least 7-star, which is the current minimum requirement, this is going to be a really good house. And it'll probably be far better than what you've had any experience with. And you don't need hydronic heating in such a good house. Just having an air conditioner ticking over will be plenty to keep you warm in the winter and cool in the summertime.
Well, that's fair enough. I mean, my main comment was just if you're changing over, get rid of the ducting and go to whatever other system is there.
Yeah, certainly So I break the air conditioners into 2 parts. There's two groups. There's the ducted type and the not ducted type. So the not ducted type, that's your split systems. But there's a whole different range of ways to do not ducted air conditioners. Of course, we're all very familiar with the split systems up on the wall, but there's also floor standing reverse cycle air conditioners, not ducted, or you can get not ducted in ceiling cassettes and in bulkheads. So there's many different ways to do not ducted air conditioning that you could have a look at. If you're visiting an air conditioning place, get all the hard copy brochures that they have and look through them all. That way you're seeing everything that's on offer, as opposed to if you go on the internet, you may miss some of the good options that we're hiding somewhere.
I think it might be time to wrap this up now. We've had about half an hour of Q&A, and I think so. I would just like to thank everyone once again for coming tonight. We're not going to wrap it up just yet. I've got a little bit more for you, but before we do that, I just wanted to thank Kate so much for joining us remotely. Tim, coming all over from Sandringham. He'll be outside with his book soon. And Patricia, of course, Councillor. Can we just give them all a big hand? And also thank you to everybody here for your great questions. It shows that there's community interest, which I find very encouraging. Now, this night, of course, is brought to you by Healesville Core, and I thought it might be just a good opportunity to quickly tell you just a little bit about what we have been up to. So if I press that, yes, it works. Oh. So basically our goal is to accelerate Healesville transition to renewable energy. So Healesville and surrounds, that's basically in a nutshell what we're trying to do. Interesting. There it is. So yeah, we do run quite a few events. We used to run quite a few a year. We've sort of only do a couple a year and then try to concentrate on that. And that's just a selection of the events that we've had since 2017. We did have community offers a few years ago. We're not really concentrating on that quite so much these days. We're just trying to update our website, and there is so much good information out there anyway, but over the years we've had all these bulk buy community offers. The EV one from a few years ago was especially popular. This is a great service I'd like to spend a couple of minutes just telling you about. So all tonight we've been talking about having an efficient electric home, and Healesville Core do have 9 home energy efficiency advisors, and they are specially trained to come out to your home, and they will just walk through and just tell you things that you can do to change your home. They'll look at your power bill and give you all sorts of great ideas. And that service is free for Healesville Core members and available for a very small, it's moving too quick, available for a small cost for everybody else. And this was touched on before. Oh, stop, go back. It's out of control. This one was touched on before too, our community fund community group revolving fund. And so back in 2019, we received some funding and we put solar on some of our community buildings, but rather than just stop there, we thought, well, let's just set up a system where the groups actually, we lend them the money interest-free, and then so there's no upfront costs, and we put the solar on, and then they pay us back using the savings that they would have spent on their bills anyway. Their power bills will be cheaper, and they just pay us back that way. Once the loan is paid off, of course, the solar is theirs to benefit from. And we did the first three, and only a couple of weeks ago we added on our fourth one, which is Yarra Valley FM radio. So that's something that we'd like to continue. We also received a really great grant last year, and that's a $60,000 grant, and we used some of it to upgrade Badger Creek Hall with energy efficiency upgrades. We've replaced inefficient gas heaters with heat pumps and hot water and all that. We've insulated the ceilings where it didn't have it before, and we've also done the same for a community home owned. We haven't got the photos there, but yeah, we've just had, as you can see, curtains, pelmets, heat pumps. We've just done all that sort of thing to help Badger Creek Hall, and they're very happy with the upgrades, especially as the centenary is coming up next year. What else have I got here? Oh yeah, we just like to get out and about. We've joined in quite a few different events over the years. We merged with Yarra Glenergy last year, so we've inherited the EV charger in Yarra Glen. What else? I think that's about it, is it? Yep, that's about it. So that's what we're going to continue doing. We've also this year had a couple of new projects, solar for Healesville business. That's something that's been on our radar for quite some time. We've been just trying to say, how can we get solar in our main street of Healesville? And so that's we've been engaging with businesses, and we've also got on our website something called Sustainable Choices. We're working on that at the moment. We've actually appointed a consultant who's here with us today. There he is. Thanks, Corey. And he's doing a lot of research. So eventually what we hope to have for you is like a one-stop shop of all these renewable energy options that you can just go to. I think that's about it. So thank you everybody for your time again. And if you're interested in what Healesville Core are doing, we'd love you to come and join us. We are a very small group of volunteers, and I think pretty much everybody on the committee has got a dual role at the moment, so we could certainly do with some help. And I'm going to put the call out for a treasurer. We've had a wonderful, wonderful treasurer for the last few years, but he's going to hang up his pen or spreadsheet or where treasurers hang up, and our AGM, which is in November. So we are on the lookout for a treasurer. And I'll just say, skills can be learnt. So if you do have the passion and you want to get involved, come and talk to us. We'll be out there in the foyer, and skills can be learnt. So, you know, what else did I want to say? The mailing list, yes, join our mailing list if you haven't already. You can become a member. We will have volunteers out there in the foyer, and you can have a chat with people about them. And probably the most important thing you can do tonight, though, is, look, if anything here has sparked your interest and got you thinking about things, have those conversations with your friends. Just keep the awareness going, keep the conversations going, and just talk to your friends about this. And I think that's about it, except I have to say a very, very, very big thank you to Matt up there and Ryan for doing all the tech stuff. Let's give them a hand. I think it's just amazing how they can put all this together. I don't have to worry, it's really great. And thanks also to the Memo staff. So hopefully while we've been in here, they've put together a nice supper for you. So please hang around. If you've got time, you don't need to rush home. Hang around, have a chat with Tim, have a chat with Patricia and us or whatever, have a cuppa. All right, and I hope you've got something out of tonight. Thank you very much.